So, are you or have you ever been in hell? Raise your hands. So the trick is knowing if and when you're in hell. Because if you know what's going on, if you understand, if it's part of your consciousness, we know that as good Unity students, that when it's part of our consciousness, when we can see it tangibly in front of us, we then can begin the process of changing it. Now, I wish my ordination came with a magic wand, so I could just come along and tap you each on the shoulder, and every prayer request you've ever thought of would already be granted. I don't know about David's ordination, but mine didn't come with a magic wand. But what I have discovered over my nearly 25 years of ministry is that when I set an intention and when I also work on it meaning move my own feet, that particular form of hell often can leave. So this is based on a book, and one of the technological advances of life is a little hard. I can't hold up a book and show it to you, but I'm going to show you the picture on my Kindle because it's a wonderful book by Reverend Ellen Davenport. Hell in the Hallway, Light at the Door. So if you haven't read this book, this is what we're going to be exploring together over the next 5 weeks. If you're interested in having that book, it's on Amazon. You can get it on your own Kindle, or I know they still actually make paper copies. But that's the book that we're basing this on. So, what do you imagine that title means? Hell in the Hallway. What's the hallway? Pardon? Where you're standing in your path. And just for curiosity's sake, how long is the hallway? Aha! It could be 40 inches long. It could be 40 feet long. It could be 40 miles long. It could be 40 years long. Because we all know that metaphysically 40 is as long as it takes. I know you recognize that number from the Bible. So Jesus would go into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Moses wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. So we all wander in that condition exactly as long as we need to wander. However, we can't just say, okay, I'm done today. I'm not wandering in this wilderness any longer. I'm through with this hallway. Get out. Doesn't quite work that way, does it? So the hallway in this instance is considered to be the place between jobs, after a relationship ends, after a death, after a divorce. Any time that the world you know is changing at a rapid pace and you don't know what's coming next. So my guess is that if you're like me, in many ways, in this very moment, you might be in hell. I also thought it would be useful to remind us what unity means when we say heaven and hell. So I went to the source on these things. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, wrote in Revealing Words that heaven is the realm of divine mind, a state of consciousness that's in harmony with the thoughts of God. Heaven is everywhere present. So if we aren't in hell, we're in heaven. So what's hell? Metaphysically, hell represents a corrective state of mind when error has reached its limit, The retroactive law asserts itself, and judgment, being part of that law, brings the penalty called hell upon the transgressor. This penalty is not punishment but discipline. If the transgressor is repentant and obedient, they are forgiven. So what does that mean? If we take it out of Charles' language from the 19th century and move it into the 21st century, it means when things are falling apart in our world, when we're unhappy, when we're ill, when many of these things are happening, we don't necessarily have to be in hell, but many of us do find ourselves in that place. So it's interesting because the scripture that I see as representing the title of my talk comes from the 23rd Psalm. So the part that is relevant for this conversation we're having this morning is walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And what unity ministers often like to say is that means you don't pitch a tent, means you don't build a house there, but you walk through those times that are difficult. And sometimes walking through simply requires putting one foot in front of the other and moving forward at whatever pace that might be for you. Many of you have heard the expression that when one door opens or closes, another door opens. But the space in between can often be hell. So the good news is that no matter which form of hell we might be in, the spiritual work is exactly the same. The circumstances that brought us when we're in hell to that hallway can be very, very different. But how we proceed through that hallway is honestly the same. So, what might we be doing? And what might that hallway look like? So I don't have anything up. It's my fault. Okay. Oops, too many. All right, forget you have two up there. We'll just leave them. Oh, you made it gone. Good job. I like having help. I need all the help I can get. So, the hallway is a place of uncertainty, and sometimes the door that shuts slams. Sometimes the door that shuts creaks. Sometimes the door that shut jams, halfway open, halfway closed. But what we know is if we're in the hallway, change is the only way that's going to make it better. And who do we get to change? Oh, you are so good. You know, if you're like me, you want to change the other person. It's their fault. But we don't get to do that, do we? Nope. We only get to change ourselves. So, change is the only way that our lives get better. And changing ourselves is the way that happens. So, the question is, how do doors get closed? Well, I have more to say about the other one. Take it away again. So sometimes there are doors that slam. You know, you get up in the morning, it's a perfectly normal day, and a door slams. How are some of the ways that a door might slam immediately? Lose your job. You went to work in the morning, you thought you would be working there for the rest of your life, and they gave you a pink slip. How else might a door slam? Sure.
Get an upsetting phone call.
And what might that upsetting phone call say?
Apparently ill, somebody dying.
Yeah.
Discrimination.
Discrimination. You thought you were safe here. Sure.
Water dripping on your head.
He said the S word, in case you didn't get it. So, there are the doors that just slam. And when some of those doors slam, not so much the dripping water maybe, but when those doors slams, your life is changed forever. Chances are that phone call that says one of your parents have died or something like that has happened, that's not reversible. The phone call that says, or the pink slip that says you're fired, it doesn't mean that you aren't ever going to get another job, but it means this particular job is over forever. And those abrupt changes may very well send you directly to hell. And what about that circumstance makes it hell? You didn't have any control over it. And? Pardon? The way we think about it, absolutely. And? Loss of direction.
The unknown.
The unknown. Mm-hmm. Now, pardon? What are the immediate consequences? No paycheck. You'll never see your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, whoever you love again. That circumstance doesn't change. So it's not like we can sit down and pray about it and get the job back or bring our loved one back. That changes forever. So the question then becomes, what are we going to do with that change? I have a niece right now back in Ohio, and her husband was diagnosed with cancer and he died within a month. It was a very quick process. And on Facebook, almost daily, she's still grieving. She may be grieving for a very, very long time. They were married for many, many years. And even though, you know, being my niece, she's a lot younger than I am, her husband's dead. That doesn't change. Sometimes life hurts. And we can be the absolute best truth students, and life still is going to hurt because we're having a human experience. So, as we walk through that process, you can see that sometimes when a door closes abruptly like that, our healing process is going to take a while. How is it that we're going to work with that? This is such a fun remote. So, there are doors that close slowly. Can you imagine what some of the doors are that would close slowly? What would you think those doors might be?
Long-term illness.
A long-term illness. You've had a diagnosis, but who knows what that prognosis will end up being. A relationship stagnating. So it's not like it slams shut. You know, on Valentine's Day, my younger daughter's husband said, "I'm done. I don't love you. I never loved you." Well, now that was not a quick kind of change into the hallway. But sometimes you just notice that this relationship doesn't work. And so you're living with that experience, and in a little while we're going to talk about the way that that particular circumstance unfolds. So what else might be a slow entrance into the hallway?
You might notice a job kind of slipping away slowly.
Okay, technology's changing. There are other people getting laid off. You know, the question becomes, when will it be my turn? That's a hard one because you are anticipating the beginning of a hallway, but you're not there yet. So not all hallways are that kind of dramatic. So I'll give you another one so your mind sort of thinks in a different way. So what if somebody asks you to get married? That's a change. Now you aren't married, but someday you're going to get married, and so you're walking through a hallway of what that change is going to look like. Maybe the test strip came out pink. I don't know. What does that mean? It may mean that there will be 3 of you soon. Or 4, or 5, who knows? But do you see that suddenly in that moment you've entered a hallway? In that moment you know your life's changing. It hasn't changed yet, and yet your mind, which is your greatest asset and your greatest liability, makes up all kinds of stories about what that's going to be. We sang our first song, we sang about, our ego. Sometimes we're like a metaphysical zygote because our ego goes ranting on away about how something's going to be when we've only just taken this little tiny step into the hallway and we don't know what's going to be on the other end. So, they call that, Ellen, the author of the book, Reverend Ellen, calls that a dog leg. She says you're entering one part of the change, but then there's going to be another part of the change when you have the baby, when you actually get married, when when the anticipated experience comes, that begins another part of the transition. So there's the first part and the second part of that transition. So that's a door that closes slowly. So there's another kind of change, and we have that one up there already. Sometimes we're choosing the hallway. When might you be choosing to enter the hallway?
Change your career,
Change your career, absolutely.
change where you live,
Change where you live.
go back to school,
Go back to school. Do you start a new relationship? All those things. Leave one. Yes, all of those things. Endless hallways. When we choose, oops, I'm on the wrong one. Choosing the hallway. It's when we're choosing to close a door, but we don't really know where we're going to end up yet. We don't really know what's going to happen. It's another part of the hallway where our imagination, our egos, can run rampant. If I go back to school in my middle 40s to become a minister, surely the world is going to be at my feet. I will have thousands of people in my congregation. I will be able to transform the world. I'd hate to tell you how many people enter ministerial school with that dream, with that illusion. That doesn't happen. In many of our entrances into the hallway, this relationship is going to be different than the last one. This one will be perfect. We will never fight. We will never disagree. We will always have joyous fun together. Or not. So how we begin, when we choose a hallway, we're still being called to something different than what is, and yet we aren't there yet. We have no idea whether it will work. One thing to remember about making a conscious choice is that it requires an immense amount of courage. To even take that very first step means that we have to cross a barrier of fear. Fear that it will work, fear that it won't work. So crossing that barrier becomes an important thing. So, the next one, let me see if I can just do one at a time. Inner hallways. Sometimes the hallway we enter can't be seen by anyone but us. That's often a spiritual crossroads. We know that in our life, there's something more than what we have. We're looking for a spiritual answer within. And often there's great angst with that hallway because we don't know where we're going. When I think back and remember my own spiritual journey, I started life as a Southern Baptist. I was in church many, many times a week. And everything in my life was a sin, except going to church, pretty much. And then when I was about 16, I was at a camp as a camp counselor. And I was in charge of my little flock of 8 little girls. And, you know, I don't know if any of you ever been to Baptist church camps, but they consist of a lot of church. Chapel. So in the evening service, there was a minister who came to speak who was a relatively young man, even to me at 16, compared to some of the ministers I'd had. And he was a recent convert. And he talked about his life of sinning before he was saved. It looked really good to me. So I made a decision that night. I literally made a decision, and again, if you have any experience with Baptists, you know there are altar calls. Well, I didn't walk down front, but I honestly made a conscious decision in that moment at 16 to go and sin. I want to tell you, I did a fine job, and I spent most of my adult life till my 40s as an atheist. Because if that was what God was, I couldn't believe in that God. So I became an atheist. Then I began a search for something more. And I couldn't go back to where I'd been. Hallways don't work that way. They're one way. But I could go forward and discover what it was that spirituality meant to me. It was a process of discovery. It was a process of unfolding. That hallway lasted nearly 10 years. I couldn't find exactly what it was. I just knew that what I'd seen wasn't it. So, when we're in an inner hallway that's invisible, it's a time of growth. It's a time of transition. It's often a time of releasing, letting go of what doesn't work in your life without knowing what you're going forward to. It's often called the dark night of the soul. It's a spiritual wilderness, and you truly do wander in there for as long as it takes until it's time to come out at the other end. The next kind of hallway that you might walk into is an endless hallway. What do you think an endless hallway might be? How would that unfold? A terminal illness. You receive a diagnosis of fill in the blank. You might have no idea whether you've got 3 months, 6 months, 6 years. That's an endless hallway. What else might be an endless hallway? Your life is an endless hallway, absolutely. Because we all have a terminal illness. It's called life. There's not a one of us in this room that's not going to exit.
But would like illnesses like addiction or diabetes, or things that affect you ongoing, might be on top, might be above it, but you're never completely escaped?
Absolutely. You live with some kind of a diagnosis and you adapt your life. Aging falls under that category in some ways. You know, we can work out as hard as we want to. We can take all the vitamin pills in the world. We can use as many creams as we want. But we are not going to be 18 again. I have bad news. None of you in this room are going to be 18 again.
Thank God. My trainer said you can get stronger, but you never get buff.
Yeah. So what else might be in the endless hallway?
Disability, like being diagnosed with a disability.
Sure. A disability diagnosis? Depression. That's a tough one, isn't it? And it's not like we necessarily have to walk into a doctor's office, but we began to feel, my paraphrase for it is, unable to get off the couch. We're unable to get out of the chair. We're unable to leave the house. And that certainly, particularly for that person experiencing that, feels endless. It feels impossible. Any other endless hallways that you can think of?
Being Catholic and wanting a divorce.
Bless your heart, we shouldn't laugh at that, but if you're, quote, a good Catholic and you're, you don't feel free to release your spouse, that can be an endless hallway. Absolutely.
We're not making the same mistake over and over and over again.
Oh, that's a wonderful one. Good for you, Ginger. That wonderful cycle we get on.
Looking for love and all wrong. Is there a song to that?
I think I might have sung that song for once or twice. Making the same choices over again, expecting to have a different result. We all know that's a great definition of insanity, isn't it? Any other one that comes to your mind?
You're a criminal.
Oh, that's an excellent one. And these days, there are odd ways that well, not odd, but, you know, there are people, which is interesting in this state, who have been in jail for 20 years for possession of marijuana. Okay? I have a friend whose brother has been in jail forever. And today, he's still in jail. He can't get out. He had more than, who knows, 10 ounces, whatever the right and perfect amount was in Ohio at that day and age.
How about being undocumented in the United States?
Can you imagine that hallway? That would be,
Especially today.
yeah. So endless hallways are one of the kinds of ways that we can feel absolutely trapped by our circumstances. And in an endless hallway, sometimes it's even difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's difficult to know that there is something that we can do. You know, one of the people who came to mind when I was contemplating endless hallways was Stephen Hawking. Think of his diagnosis as a very young man with his brilliant mind trapped in that body that appeared deformed, And he has a wonderful, tiny little quote that he uses. He tells you, you have the power to create your life right where you are, no matter what is around you. So imagining Stephen trapped in his body and yet having a boundless effect on the world, having a boundless effect on how the world views everything. So whatever our endless hallway is, it's a hallway that we learn to live with rather than a hallway that can be overcome. Even though that hallway seems endless, what they discover in that hallway is that there is light in the hallway, not at the end of a tunnel. Sometimes there are short hallways. Once you recognize how hallways work, such as the reoccurring events in your life, you can see that you can have a short episode in the hallway, but it's still a hallway and the same principles apply. So maybe you've applied for that new job. Maybe you're wanting the test strip to turn pink. Maybe you're waiting for a callback for a job that you interviewed for. That's a short hallway. You know that there's a definite end to it in the next 5 minutes or in the next 5 days. But yet, if you recognize it, you know that you're in that hallway and you can apply the same spiritual principles to get out. Now, come on. Oh, it's 2 or nothing. There are group hallways. You alluded to the group hallway earlier. What do you think are in group hallways? Undocumented people, for sure. That's a group hallway. And the truth is, whether you are an undocumented immigrant or whether you are a native-born American, we're in this hallway together right now. How is that hallway going to be resolved? How do we live with people who are on different sides of that issue, who have different opinions? What else is a group hallway that we're in right now?
Homeless vets.
Homeless vets. Again, whether you are the homeless vet, whether you're the guy on the corner with the sign, or whether you're the person driving up to, giving or not giving money, we're all in that circumstance. That's a group hallway. What else is a group hallway we're in? Senior issues, group hallway. Absolutely. People with disabilities, that's a group hallway. Mentally ill. That's a fabulous example of a group hallway. If you lived in Houston, Texas, you are still perhaps in that hallway, because even though you're no longer in the news, you may not have your home rebuilt. You may not have been able to recreate your possessions. If you're in Puerto Rico, I think there are people who still don't have power, a few up in the mountains. That's another endless or another group hallway that appears endless sometimes. Sure.
The fire evacuees.
The forest fires. So we've got forest fires. We have floods. We have tornadoes and or hurricanes. Pardon? Volcanoes, absolutely. So those are group hallways. We have another group hallway that you haven't mentioned yet. Global warming is certainly a group hallway. Countries, yeah. Politics feels certainly like an endless group holiday. Hallway. Yeah, we need a holiday. The only way is turn off the news. So what other circumstance happens almost weekly? Shootings. Church, yeah, but if somebody walks in that door right now with a machine gun, he's got us all. And our children live with that fear. Some of us are old enough to remember crawling under our desks and putting our hands over our head to protect ourselves from an atomic blast. Well, that's about as effective as what our kids are doing. That's a group hallway. And it's toughest on the children because they have no control. So there are group hallways that we live in. So do you see all the ways that it's hell in the hallway? And so over the next 4 weeks, stay tuned, come back, no, buy the book. We're going to look at ways to resolve that experience. But there's one thing that I want you to remember. Oh, there it came back. It's a miracle. It came back. We have to honor our feelings no matter which hallway we're in. Can you tell me what honor your feelings means to you? I'm curious what answer will come from you. Okay, and what does it look like when I accept my feelings?
When you recognize what they are,
Okay.
that's a start.
Be honest with yourself.
Be honest with yourself.
Allow yourself to feel the feelings and then let them go.
Atta
Don't
girl.
judge yourself.
Yeah. So it's really a two-part process with your feelings. Your feelings are just your feelings. But if you don't feel them, you'll be in a therapist's office someday dealing with those feelings. So it's important to honor your feelings, and at the same time, it's important to know that you are not your feelings. So I'm sure you have discovered on your journey that spirituality is a paradox. Unlike some churches that will tell you absolutely this is the way it is, we don't do that in Unity. But we try to give you the tools to deal with it. So when I say feel your feelings, you may be angry, you may be sad, you may be grieving, you may be in a rage, you may be joyous and ecstatic and happy. But what do we know about those feelings? They pass. Bless your heart. They pass. Sure.
Unless you stuff them.
Unless you stuff them. So you watch them come up. You can feel that rage rise in a heartbeat. And you can feel it go away in a heartbeat. And yet at the same time, acknowledging whatever you feel, expressing it, not by beating each other to death, but by expressing it. This is what I'm feeling. I feel mad, sad, happy, glad, whatever you're feeling. But how long do you get to keep the feeling? Oh, come on, I gave you a magic number. 40. You can have it for 40 seconds, for 40 minutes, for 40 hours, for 40 days, for 40 years. As long as it takes for you to have that feeling, actually feel the feeling. Stop for just a second and feel it. Not stuffing it, not necessarily expressing it in a destructive way, but simply feeling it. I feel, and even if you aren't going to say those words out loud, saying them to yourself. I feel sad, frustrated, irritated, whatever the case might be, for as long as you need to feel it, and then you let it go. 40 seconds, 40 minutes, 40 hours.
What if it's a good feeling?
Unfortunately, it works the same way. I would challenge you, I don't want you to tell me out loud, but some of those good feelings, don't really last all that long. So, your opportunity, should you choose to accept it, is to know that you're in a hallway, to notice what kind of a hallway you're in, to feel your feelings, and to notice if this is a hallway that's a short one. Is it an endless one? Is it a group one? But you're the only one who gets to control your experience while you're in the hallway. So now I simply invite you to breathe, to relax into your seats, to become comfortable. You may notice any tension you have in your neck or your arms. I often consciously release my hands. I notice that I have a habit of clenching my fists and that I need to release that tension. Breathing together. Noticing simply the rise and fall of your chest. Noticing the divine breath of God breathing you. Inhale the truth that you know. Exhaling fear. Recognizing that we are here on a spiritual journey. That we have chosen this time, this place, this life. We have chosen to be human. And in our choice to become human, we have chosen all of the experiences that go with being human. We have chosen the magnificence, the transcendence, the beauty of our world, of of this universe. And we have chosen the difficult times. We have chosen to learn and grow, to be together in this wonderful experience called human life. We can connect with the love, with the experience and connectivity of being together with like-minded souls. And we also choose the work of loving those souls that are not like-minded. One of the blessings of unity is that we know that we are all one. That statement contains the work of loving unlovable individuals. The ones that cause some of the hallways that we walk in. Our opportunity is to find a way within ourselves to send compassion and empathy and joy, first of all, always to ourselves. Allowing ourselves to feel those feelings. Then we easily and joyously send it to those we love. And then we take a deep breath and send that same experience to those that we do not love. This is the work of the rest of our lives. That we, as Unity students, can live the truth that we know. So we take a deep breath and move into the stillness, beginning that work wherever we need to. First with ourselves, perhaps with those we love, perhaps with those we don't love, in the stillness. Celebrating this life. Celebrating the birds singing outside this building. Celebrating all of those driving in traffic near us. Celebrating each other. We choose gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. thank you. And so it is. Amen. Please join in singing Alleluia.
Doris, thank you so much. I know you've given us all welcoming food for thought for the coming week. Now it's time to take an offering for unity. As we take our gifts in our hands, together we say, Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. Amen. And now again, let's welcome Trinity Damask in your reverence.